Right now, in your yard, there's a green thing you call a weed that someone else might pay good money for, or that could have been part of a Neanderthal's burial offering. Stick around. We're going to count down 10 common backyard plants and the surprising health and nutritional benefits people have used them for, from kitchen secrets to folk medicine and modern lab findings. By the end, you might never look at your lawn the same way. Before we start, quick favor. If you like learning how ordinary plants can do extraordinary things, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. It helps us make more content like this. Now let's get into the list. Number 10. Ground elder. Look for a low-spreading plant with 3-lobed leaves and umbrella-like clusters of tiny white flowers, usually pushing up in shady borders and old walls. Historically, ground elder was a staple in monastery gardens across medieval Europe. Monks appreciated its easy growth and used the young leaves as a pot herb. People have used it topically for joint aches and gout-like complaints, and it contains flavonoids and vitamin C that can contribute to mild antioxidant effects. Today, modern interest centers on its anti-inflammatory potential in lab studies, though clinical evidence remains limited. In the kitchen, the tender spring shoots can be chopped into salads or lightly steamed like spinach. Drying it makes a simple herbal tea. Safety note: it can be confused with other umbellifers, so confirm the leaf shape and flower cluster before harvesting, and avoid if you're on anticoagulant medication without checking with a professional. Number 9. Cleavers, also called sticky willy. You'll know it by its stringy, clinging stems and tiny hooked hairs that make it stick to socks and fur. Folk herbalists have prized cleavers as a spring blood cleanse tonic and as a gentle diuretic for swollen tissues. People steep the fresh plant to make a light, cooling infusion in spring cleanses. Chemically, it offers polysaccharides and iridoid-type compounds that may support lymphatic circulation in traditional accounts, and small studies suggest mild diuretic and anti-inflammatory action in lab settings. Roast the seeds as a coffee substitute, or make a fresh herbal tea from young stems and leaves. Safety note: be careful when harvesting from areas treated with herbicides or pet waste, and if you have kidney disease or are taking diuretics, consult a clinician before using cleavers therapeutically. Number 8. Creeping Charlie, also known as ground ivy. This low carpet of scalloped leaves blooms with small purple flowers and often creeps through lawns and shady beds. Medieval brewers used it in Groot, a mixture of herbs that flavored and preserved beer before hops became standard, because of its bitter, minty, slightly astringent flavor. Traditionally, people brewed Creeping Charlie as an expectorant for coughs and a mild stomach bitter. It contains volatile oils and phenolic compounds that give it that distinctive aroma and bitter note. Some pockets of modern herbalists still use it as a tea for coughs and mild digestive complaints, but evidence is mostly traditional and laboratory-based. You can add a few fresh leaves to a savory dish for a minty bitter lift, or steep a handful as a warm tea. Safety note: avoid confusing it with lookalikes and start with small amounts. Some people find the flavor strong or irritating and do not rely on it in place of medical care for serious respiratory issues. Number 7. Sheep sorrel. If you've ever tasted a tangy lemony leaf with a sharp bite, you've likely met sheep sorrel. The leaves are arrow-shaped with a bright sour tang due to oxalic acid. In North American folk practice, sheep sorrel has been used in cooling summer teas and as an ingredient in the herbal blend popularized as Essiac, a tonic associated with traditional use more than rigorous trials. Nutritionally, sorrel is a source of vitamin C and other antioxidants, but its oxalate content means people prone to kidney stones should be cautious. Some small laboratory work has isolated organic acids and polyphenols that could explain its antioxidant reputation, though clinical evidence is lacking. Try a few young leaves tossed into salads or blended into a cold soup for a refreshing tartness, but don't overdo it. Safety note: Because of the oxalates, those with a history of kidney stones or who are on certain medications should avoid large amounts and consult a healthcare provider. Number 6. Self-heal, sometimes called heal-all. This shy little plant has square stems and small purple flowers clustered into a tight head. You'll find it in lawns, roadside verges and meadows. Across Eurasia, it earned the reputation of a universal remedy, hence the name, used for sore throats, minor fevers and wound care. Traditional systems, including Chinese herbalism, where it's known as ziakukao, use it for cooling and clearing purposes. Modern lab studies point to antibacterial and antiviral compounds and molecules that may support wound repair and immune responses in cell-based work, though strong clinical trials are sparse. Use it as a gentle infusion for gargling with sore throats or as a mild wound wash when properly prepared. Dried leaves can go into teas or poultices. Safety note: confirm identification. Do not substitute it for antibiotics in serious infections, and check for possible plant-drug interactions if you're on immunomodulating medications. Number 5. Yarrow. You might spot flat clusters of tiny white flowers and feathery leaves that smell pleasantly herbal when crushed. Yarrow has one of those deep-time fingerprints on human history. Archaeologists found evidence suggesting its use in ancient burials, and there are arguments that it appeared alongside human graves as a medicinal or ritual plant. Folk herbalists have long used yarrow as a diaphoretic to encourage sweating during fevers, as a digestive bitter, and to ease menstrual discomfort. Chemically, it contains bitter sesquiterpene lactones, flavonoids and tannins that may explain its traditional uses. Laboratory studies indicate anti-inflammatory and hemostatic, wound-stopping activity in certain preparations, though the clinical picture is still preliminary. You can brew yarrow as a bitter tea, add dried flowers to bath blends for skin support, or apply cooled infused liquid to minor cuts. Safety note: yarrow can cause allergic reactions in people sensitive to plants in the Asteraceae family, and because it can be mildly uterine-stimulating, pregnant people should avoid medicinal use unless advised by a professional. That Neanderthal burial connection is one of those memorable facts that shows how long we've relied on bitter, aromatic herbs. Number 4. Chickweed. This soft, low-growing plant with tiny star-shaped flowers carpets bare soil in cool months and is a traditional winter green in many cultures. People have eaten chickweed as a salad green and used it in soothing skin salves. It's mildly nutritive, providing vitamins and minerals after lean seasons, and the leaves have a mucilaginous quality that's calming to irritated skin and a gentle demulcent for mild digestive irritation. Traditional herbalists mix chickweed into poultices for itchy rashes and into salves for chapped skin. On the chemical side, chickweed contains saponins and mucilage that help explain the slippery, soothing texture. Use it fresh in salads, wilt it into soups, or steep it briefly for a cooling wash for inflamed skin. Safety note: avoid harvesting from chemically treated lawns and always wash chickweed thoroughly. People with a history of pollen allergies should sample cautiously. Number 3. Dandelion. If there's one weed many people grudgingly tolerate, it's the dandelion, bright yellow flowers and puffball seed heads that scatter in the breeze. But dandelion is more than a doorstep nuisance. The leaves are rich in vitamins A and K and provide calcium and iron, while the root contains inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Across cultures, dandelion leaves have been used as a nutrient-dense salad green, the roasted root as a coffee substitute, and the flowers for wines and syrups. Modern interest focuses on its diuretic effects and digestive bitter components, with some small studies and lab work supporting beneficial effects on bile flow and digestion. Again, clinical evidence is emerging, but not definitive. Try young dandelion leaves tossed into mixed greens, or make a roasted root beverage as a caffeine-free alternative. Safety note: Dandelion can interact with some medications like blood thinners, so check with a healthcare provider if you're taking prescriptions or have gallbladder issues. Number 2. Stinging nettle. When you brush past a patch in summer, the tiny needle-like hairs deliver that sharp, momentary sting. But once cooked, the plant transforms into a tender, nutrient-dense green. Nettles are loaded with iron, calcium and protein for a leafy plant, and traditional uses span everything from spring tonics to treatments for seasonal allergy symptoms and benign prostate support in folk and some clinical contexts. The sting itself contains formic acid and histamine-like compounds. Historically, European herbalists used controlled urtication, intentional stinging, to provoke circulation and ease stiffness. Modern research has investigated nettle for its anti-inflammatory compounds and potential to modulate allergic responses. Some clinical studies suggest benefit for mild allergy symptoms and for certain benign prostate conditions. But research is nuanced and not a blanket endorsement. Culinary preparations include blanching the leaves for soups, stews, or pesto. Once wilted, the sting is gone, and the flavor is spinach-like with a deep green richness. Safety note: always cook or thoroughly wilt nettle before eating. Wear gloves to harvest if you're sensitive, and if you have a history of severe allergies or are taking blood pressure or anticoagulant drugs, consult a professional before using nettle medicinally. Number 1. Plantain. Not the banana-like fruit, this plantain is the common lawnweed with wide, ribbed leaves or a narrow lance-shaped variety, often the first plant you notice pushing through compacted soil. It's an underappreciated powerhouse. Across continents, people have used plantain for generations as a poultice for bites and stings, and as a demulcent to soothe irritated mucous membranes. The leaves are rich in mucilage, a slippery, soothing substance, and contain iridoid glycosides and tannins that help explain both topical and internal uses. If you've ever heard of psyllium, that association is a useful anchor. Plantain's mucilaginous action is conceptually similar to how some fiber supplements soothe and bulk the gut, which is why plantain often gets mentioned when people talk about natural fiber sources. Traditional uses include chewing a leaf and pressing it to a bee sting, or making a cooling compress from mashed leaves, and people also dry the leaves for teas intended to ease mild throat irritation. Modern lab work highlights anti-inflammatory and wound-healing properties in certain extracts, though clinical trials are limited. Safety note: plantain is generally well tolerated, but always identified correctly. There are lookalikes in some regions, and avoid harvesting from polluted sites like roadsides. If you're using it for persistent symptoms, see a clinician first. Those are the 10, but a few connective thoughts before we close. Across this list, you'll notice recurring themes: bitter compounds that stimulate digestion, mucilage that soothes membranes, inulin and fibers that feed gut bacteria, and nutrient-dense leaves that served as emergency greens through seasons of scarcity. Many of these plants show up repeatedly in different cultures, and that cultural continuity can be compelling. Monks, folk herbalists, beer brewers, and even ancient peoples kept finding similar uses. That doesn't equal clinical proof, but it does signal that human communities have valued these plants for centuries, sometimes millennia. A few safety points to underline. First, identification matters. Some edible or medicinal weeds have poisonous lookalikes. Confirm leaf shape, flower form, and habitat before you harvest. Second, natural does not automatically mean safe. Oxalates in sour greens like sorrel can contribute to kidney stones in susceptible people. Plants that act as blood thinners or diuretics can interact with prescription medications, and any plant can provoke allergic reactions in a sensitive person. Third, avoid foraging in areas exposed to pesticides, heavy traffic, or animal waste. Even a perfectly edible plant becomes risky if it's contaminated. And finally, the evidence ranges from long-standing traditional use to isolated lab studies. Very few of these plants have large-scale clinical trials proving broad medical effects. Treat them as traditional tools and supportive foods, not as replacements for professional medical care. If you want to put this into practice safely, start small and local. Learn to identify a couple of species well. Try a culinary application like a salad or a cooked green, and keep notes on how you respond. Join a local foraging group or take a wild plant identification class if you're serious. Hands-on learning is the best way to build confidence and avoid mistakes. Thanks for staying with the countdown. If you have a backyard weed you'd like us to profile next, or a surprising plant your family always used, leave it in the comments. We read them and love hearing your stories. If you found this helpful, please hit subscribe so you don't miss future plant profiles and practical foraging tips. One last reminder, this video is meant to inform and inspire, not to diagnose or treat medical conditions. Consult a qualified healthcare provider before using wild plants therapeutically, especially if you're pregnant, nursing, taking medications, or have chronic health conditions. Go slow, learn the plants, and enjoy discovering the pharmacy hiding in plain sight in your own yard.